Now when April had passed, half of May had passed, and still there was no sign of spring. But the last few days, the weather had turned mild, and they were hoping for some warmer temperatures. And then one morning in early June, William Brewster, who is known as one of the more gloomy and somber of the Pilgrims, he awoke with a start and shouted to his neighbor, "Come, come, 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 see what God has done this night." For overnight their barren fields had sprouted green. It seemed that winter had fled and summer had sprung forth all in one night. They marveled at the transformation. The ground, which just days before had been hard and frozen, now soft and moist and full of promise. And so it was that the Pilgrims spent the rest of the week in great joy, planting their crops. Their leader Massasoit gave each family an assignment for their crops. Every family was to plant corn, and every family was to plant pumpkins, and every family was to plant barley. In addition, each family would also have their own small plot where they could plant whatever else they wanted, whether it be squash or beans or beets or carrots or onions. William Bradford, who had just been re-elected governor, he took his turn in the field, and he wrote in his journal how pleasant it was to see the women and children running about the fields gathering sticks and stones, singing and talking and laughing. How unlike the bleak winter it had been. There was only one thing that would make it better, he said, and that would be if they could clear away all these trees and open up a wide field. But he knew that would take many years. As the days went by, the fields grew greener, and the seedlings grew taller. Then came the weeding. Each day, everyone had to stop their work and pull weeds from the fields. This was particularly hard on the children. They hated pulling weeds. But their mother would tell them, "If you do not pull these weeds today, the birds will scatter the seeds and we will have even more weeds next week." So the children sighed and they pulled. In the middle of July, the barley was ripe for harvest. The men cut the grain with sharp sickles, while the women followed behind with their aprons tied around their heads, gathering the grain into bundles. Then they carried the bundles back to the fort and laid them in rows to dry. They gathered enough grain for seed, then they threshed the rest of it by stomping on it until the grain separated from the chaff. After that, they winnowed it by throwing it in the air to catch the wind that blew the chaff away. Finally, they ground the flour into meal with a hand mill. This was hard, tedious work. All of the families had to participate or they wouldn't have enough food to last the winter. August brought with it more rain and more heat and more work. Every day the men cleared more trees from the forest, built more houses for the growing community. The women cooked meals for everyone and sewed clothes for the cold weather. The children ran through the fields gathering sticks and stones and digging for clams and mussels along the shore. They helped their parents prepare their crops and they looked after the animals. Then, toward the end of August, disaster struck. A great drought settled over New England. Day after day, the sun beat down on the fields, baking the soil and turning the once green stalks of corn brown and stiff. The river, which had been full and robust, began to dwindle and shrink. Soon, it was little more than a trickle. People began to panic. What would they eat? Would their children starve? Were they doomed to die in the wilderness after all? It was during this time that the Pilgrims' hope began to grow. For slowly, surely, day by day, week by week, the mistrust between them and the Wampanoag was melting away. One day, Samoset had visited the Plymouth plantation, and ever since, there had been a steady stream of Wampanoag coming to trade with the Pilgrims. The Pilgrims traded things like knives and combs and scissors and kettles for things like dried fish and corn and furs. And they also shared stories. One day, two Wampanoag braves named Tisquanum and Witwamet, they sat with the Pilgrim leaders, and they told them, "You have a great hope that your corn will grow tall and produce an abundant harvest. But you seem to forget that there are thousands of us, the Wampanoag, and we have always grown corn here. We know the secrets of the soil, how to coax the corn to grow even in the harshest of times." And then they told the Pilgrims what they needed to do. "You must leave your corn alone. Do not harvest it until the leaves have turned yellow and withered and the kernels are hard and fully formed. Only then can you harvest it. Before then, it is the work of the deer and the wild turkeys and the bears and the raccoons." The Pilgrims listened carefully. They realized that without the Wampanoag, they might not survive this harsh wilderness, and they also realized that maybe, just maybe, the Wampanoag weren't as savage and uncivilized as they had thought. Maybe they were quite the opposite. While Tisquanum and Witawamut, they stayed for 3 weeks and taught the Pilgrims everything they knew about surviving in New England, how to trap animals and fish and gather food. And then when the 3 weeks had passed, and it was time for them to go, the Pilgrims asked, "Can we pay you for all your help? Can we give you something?" And the braves answered, "We do not need anything from you. But we would like to see your harvest, the harvest that we have helped you plant." So the Pilgrims agreed, and they invited the two braves to come back in the fall and bring their friends and enjoy the harvest feast. As the days grew shorter and the nights grew cooler, the tension eased in Plymouth. People felt safer. Children played freely. They sang songs as they worked, and they all looked forward to the bountiful harvest. And they looked forward to celebrating that harvest with their new friends, the Wampanoag. Then finally, in mid-September, after 3 long months, the corn was ready to harvest. They held a great celebration. All the families came together and they feasted on cornbread and succotash and roasted corn. Everyone helped gather and carry in the corn and then store it for the winter. When they counted it up, they found that they had more than enough to last them through the winter. After the harvest, they began to slaughter and salt the hogs and cattle for the winter. Governor Bradford noted that one hog weighed over 200 pounds. He also recorded that a deer had been sighted near the plantation and that his son-in-law had taken it with a musket. And so they were grateful for the bounty of the land, for the fish in the sea, and the fowl in the sky. A few days later, Tisquanum and Witawamut returned with about 90 other Wampanoag. They came bearing gifts of venison and fish and fowl. They joined the Pilgrims in feasting and celebration. They traded with them and they shared stories. And they made plans to hunt and fish and trap together. The Pilgrims were careful to show their gratitude to the Wampanoag for teaching them how to survive in the wilderness, and they were very happy to have such brave allies against the harsh environment. So that was Chapter 6, The Spring and Summer of 1621. How did you like it? Which part was your favorite? Tell me in the comments below, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. And if you have a good book you'd like to see us bring to the screen, let me know that too. Thank you so much for watching. Signing out.